Today we're on page 5 of our Chapter 12 notes packet. So we're going back to pages 5 and 6 and finishing up our chapter notes with the half angle formulas. Okay, the functions of a half angle. The sine of a half A is equal to plus or minus the square root of 1 minus cosine A divided by 2. The cosine of a half of angle A is equal to this formula, plus or minus the square root of 1 plus cosine A divided by 2. And then also we have the tangent of half angle A. Now, they have plus or minus in front of them because we have to, dependent on where the original angle starts, half its angle, what quadrant would half the angle lie in? So let's take a look at our quadrants. We know that if we have an angle in quadrant 1, all right, that angle measures between 0 and 90 degrees. Okay, so the actual angle would measure between 0 and 90. Well, what about half the angles measure? Okay, so if we divide each by 2, we have between 0 and 45 degrees, which is still in quadrant 1. If we start with an angle in quadrant 2, it would have an angle measure between 90 and 180 degrees. Divide each of those by 2, so it's half its angle measure would be between 45 and 90 degrees. All right, both of these, whether the original angle starts off in quadrant 1 or 2, half the angle measure would result in an angle that terminates in quadrant 1. Now, if we have an angle in quadrant 3, its angle measure would be between 180 and 270 degrees, and half of each of these is 90 and 135. Start off with an angle in quadrant 4. An angle in quadrant 4 would have an angle measure anywhere between 270 and 360, and half of each, or dividing each by 2, results in 135 to 180. So if you start off with an angle measure in quadrant 3 or 4, right, half the angle measure would result in an angle that terminates in quadrant between 90 and 180 is quadrant 2. I don't have enough room there, so I'm just going to put it here, quadrant 2. Okay? So if you're looking for the sine of half of A and your original angle started off in quadrant 4, then half of it would be in quadrant 2 where sine is still positive. Right? But if you're looking for cosine of an angle A that started off in quadrant 3, and then half the angle would end up in quadrant 2 where cosine is negative. So that determines whether it's positive or negative square root. Okay, so filling in what we skipped over, the half angles from the other day. So we're starting with number 1D, cosine of half of angle A. Well, it's equal to that formula above, so it's going to equal plus or minus the square root of 1 plus cosine of A divided by 2. Okay, now angle A was in quadrant 2, right? So half of A would result in an angle in quadrant 1 where cosine is positive. So our answer here is going to be positive the square root of. Okay, so the square root of 1 plus, what was the cosine of A? We already figured out. It's there. It's negative 5/13. So it's 1 plus negative 5/13 divided by 2. So it's the square root of 1 plus negative 5/13 divided by 2. Okay, I'll allow you to go to the calculator. These numbers are fairly small. You know me, I prefer to work them out by hand. That's 13/13 plus negative 5/13 is going to be 8 13ths. So this would be 8/13 divided by 2. All right. And if I write this, dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by a half. I know. You're like, just use the calculator. Okay. So what I suggest you do is, let's key in back here, okay, without the square root symbol. So let's do alpha y equals to get our fraction bar, and our numerator 1 plus negative 5/13. So alpha y equals negative 5/13 and all over 2. And we have 4/13. Okay. So this is going to equal the square root of 4/13. Oops, sorry about that. I have too many things going on here. The square root of 4 is 2. So that's 2 over square root of 13. And let's rationalize the denominator by multiplying by, quite the glare there. There we go. By multiplying by the square root of 13 over square root of 13. So our final answer, 2 square root of 13 over 13. Positive. Next, right below that is C here, sine of a half x. And look up at the top, sine of a half of angle A is equivalent to plus or minus the square root of 1 minus the cosine of x divided by 2. And the measure of our angle was a positive acute angle. So this is going to be positive square root of 1 minus cosine x divided by 2. Cosine of x we have here is 3/5. So this is 1 minus 3/5 divided by 2. All right, key that into the calculator. Alpha y equals, again without the square root symbol, 1 minus, we'll just make it a little easier, 3 divided by 5, and then all over 2. That's 0.2. I do need the square root of it. Oh, there you go. So let me math frac that. That's 1/5. So we're looking at the square root of 1/5. And the square root of, sorry about this glare here. Okay, the square root of 1 is 1. Square root of 5 stays. So this is 1 over square root of 5. And rationalize the denominator. Multiply by square root of 5 over the square root of 5. And we get just that, square root of 5 over 5. Next, on to page 6. Number 5, we have if cosine A equals 1/3 and angle A is an acute angle, so that means it's in quadrant 1, find the sine of a half A. So all of these values, since our original angle is in quadrant 1, half the angle would be in quadrant 1 as well. So all of these plus or minuses are going to be pluses. Okay, so the sine of a half A, that's square root of 1 minus cosine A divided by 2. So this is going to equal the square root of 1 minus cosine A divided by 2. So we said it's going to be positive. Cosine of A is 1/3. 1 minus 1/3 divided by 2. All right. That's 3/3 minus 1/3 is 2/3. 2/3 divided by 2 is the same as multiplying by a half. So this is going to be equivalent to the square root of 1/3, which is equal to 1 over square root of 3, which rationalizes to the square root of 3 over 3. Next, B, the cosine of a half A. Cosine of a half A, 1 plus the cosine of A divided by 2. 1 plus the cosine of A divided by 2. So it's a square root of 1 plus 1/3. That's 3/3 plus 1/3 is 4/3 divided by 2. Dividing by 2 the same as multiplying by the reciprocal, 1/2. Again, you can use the calculator though. So that would result in the square root of 4/6. Wait a minute. All right, let me use the calculator. So 1 plus 1/3 divided by 2. It's 2/3. So this is equal to the square root of 2/3. And let's rationalize that denominator. Square root of 6/3. Right, multiplying by 3/3, square root of 3 over square root of 3. See the tangent of 1/2 a? Tangent of a half angle. 1 minus cosine a over 1 plus cosine a. So this is equal to the square root of 1 minus cosine a over 1 plus cosine a. So 1 minus 1/3 over 1 plus 1/3. Of y equals 1 minus 1/3 over 1 plus 1/3. 0.5, that's a half. Now remember, it's square root of 1/2. So that's the square root of 1 is 1, the square root of 2 is square root of 2, and rationalize the denominator. Square root of 2/2. And we have one more down at the very bottom of the page, number 8. If x is the measure of a positive acute angle and the cosine of x is equal to 7/32, find the value of sine of half x. Well, sine of half x is going to equal the square root of 1 minus cosine x divided by 2. Okay, so this is the square root of 1 minus 7/32 all over 2. Alpha y equals, go to the calculator, 1 minus 7 divided by 32 all over 2. Math frac that, math frac. 25/64. So the square root of 25/64, they're both perfect squares. Take the square root of each, 5/8. And this finishes chapter 12. Thank you.